everybody to today's program on careers and family law. I'm thrilled to see all of you here today, and I'm very excited to introduce you to our panelists in just a few moments. We have a great lineup, and I think you'll really enjoy hearing their stories and learning from their experiences. Before we begin, I want to remind you about the program the law school is hosting next week, our conversation on Prop 8. There's a flyer up here. Here. It's going to be a great conversation featuring Chief Deputy City Attorney Terry Stewart and one of our alumni, Diana Richmond, who is a family law attorney here in San Francisco with Simon and Bancroft. And they're going to have a great, lively conversation about the recent Supreme Court cases, status of marriage equality. And so for those of you with a particular interest in family law, I really encourage you to attend. They are two dynamic attorneys, and it'll be a really great conversation. So please join us. We'll actually be in this very room next Thursday at 4 o'clock. I also wanted to point out I brought with me a handout in a series we have called So You're Interested in Family Law. And this highlights just some resources for you, websites, alumni, practitioners, bar associations, resources that would be helpful for anyone with an interest in family law. So I encourage you to pick up a copy and use this as you explore the area and learn more about it. So I'll introduce our moderator, and then she will introduce the panelists. Our moderator this afternoon is an adjunct professor, Florence Sanae Phillips. Florence has been teaching several classes here at GGU, including our family law trial practice and our family externship course. She is senior counsel with Luskatoff, Lindorme, and Associates, a firm here in San Francisco. Professor Phillips earned her law degree from UCLA and began her legal career as a public defender before making a transition into the family law field. And perhaps she'll share that story with us today. She is a member of a variety of organizations, including the Asian American Bar Association, the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Association, and the Family Law section of the Bar Association of San Francisco. Professor Phillips' talents are not limited to the legal realm, however. She has many creative endeavors, including being a professional ballet dancer before embarking on her legal career. And she continues to teach dance. And so she also is a talented cook, apparently, and I learned that she won the first prize at the Marin County Fair for her chocolate pecans pie. I don't know if you share that recipe, but I'd be very interested in that. So I'm pleased to introduce Professor Phillips to you, and then she will introduce the rest of the panelists.
Thank you. I'm so delighted all of you are here. You are our next generation and our current generation, as you all headed out to taking the bar and joining our profession. I'm so delighted that you have expressed an interest in family law as well. For me personally, I kind of stumbled into family law. I started out as a public defender. Loved criminal law. However, it was very burnout track. I was a public defender in LA Central, which meant over 140 cases on calendar each day, announcing ready for trial when there were 3 deputy public defenders. So you can imagine that. So I did that for a few years, and then I joined some small civil firms that did a variety of litigation. And lo and behold, we were getting a lot of referrals for family law. Nobody wanted to do them. So I said, I've done criminal, so this can't be any worse than criminal. I volunteered, and I took to it right away. Why? Because it gives you the variety of human experience. That is why, to this day, to me, family law is the most interesting area of law, because you meet all kinds of people, from people that are broke to people that are worth $50 million, people that have assets in Nigeria, in Hong Kong, in Beijing. It's just unbelievable, the different types of assets, business assets, real estate, tax issues come up, intellectual property issues come up. I dealt with a patent on face creams. Okay, so I mean, you encounter different areas of law, different individuals with their personality quirks, certainly diversity. I have clients from the UK, from Australia, Asian clients, Belgian clients, clients from Brazil, and that's kind of my subspecialty in international issues. We have very distinguished panelists today, and and several of them are GGU graduates. And I'd like them to speak on various issues. The first and foremost, I think we're all interested in is how'd you get in? Right? How did you start your practice? And also what skills and qualities would be necessary to be successful in this field. And the nature of your practice. What does a typical day look like for you? Is it in court? Is it on the phone? Is it following meetings? Is it writing? Is it meeting with clients? What's your typical day like? And how do you gain experience in this field? As most of you probably know, family law usually is solo practice or small firms. So how would you gain experience? It's not a large law firm where you would have a lot of clerks. So how do you get in with a small firm? And I will ask them for the advice that they have to give to budding young attorneys. All right. So my first speaker is Ruth Kalmitsky. She graduated GGU in 2006, and her kind of subspecialty is adoption law, adoption litigation, and custody disputes. She represents adopted families and/or birth parents in contested adoption proceedings and guides families through. We have a family right here. Step-parent and second-parent and adult adoptions. She worked for 2 small law firms before opening her own practice, which focused on employment and insurance. She did graduate, as I said, from GGU in 2006. Ruth?
Hello. What am I talking about?
You're talking about how you got in and the nature of your practice, what a typical day looks like for you, what skills and qualities you feel are necessary to be successful in the field, and what advice you would be giving to budding young attorneys.
I'm talking about all the bullet points, apparently.
Yes, you are.
So how I got in, I also stumbled into family law quite accidentally. I wasn't particularly interested in it. I wanted to do intellectual property. I took a bunch of IP classes while I was in law school. I loved them. And I graduated and couldn't find a job. So I wound up working at a plaintiff side employment litigation firm for a while. That was pretty fun, but then I didn't really want to do it. So I moved on to a firm that did federal civil rights litigation. In some very specific cases, they sued social workers who wrongfully removed kids from their home in CPS proceedings. And since that wasn't a very steady industry, the owner of the firm supplemented with family law. So I learned most of family law there and was there for a little while and kind of ramped down my employment there. It was in San Jose and I didn't want to move. I didn't want to commute anymore. So I worked there part-time and built up a practice in San Francisco doing family law and employment litigation, which were the 2 things that I knew how to do. And I came and spoke on one of these panels, and I was the total new kid, and one very experienced senior attorney said, first thing to the panel, specialize. And I got to speak next, and I was like, I'm not specialized at all. So after that, I thought about it, and I specialized. I wound up doing family law, did that for a while, and wanted to do something a little bit more positive, a little bit more forming of families rather than taking them apart. And I started this adoption practice with another attorney, and here we are today. So she focuses mostly on outreach for birth mothers, matching couples or adoptive parents with intended birth mothers or women who are intending to place their kids for adoption. And I'm doing a lot more of the legal work, filing the petitions, showing up for court hearings, going to contested adoption hearings, all sorts of stuff like that. And in terms of advice I have for you guys, I've tried whatever you feel is interesting, bang on people's doors, offer to work for free, offer to work for cheap, talk to people, and just kind of buy your way in.
All right, and our next speaker is Stacy Poole. She's a partner at Lerner & Poole, LLP. She's a certified family law specialist, practicing exclusively in family law. She graduated GGU in 1999. Let me explain a little bit about being a specialist in family law. It's like taking another bar. Believe it or not, both Stacy and I did that. It gives you more credibility, and it really is a great review class. It gives you all the nuts and bolts. They jam it in just like a bar review. It's on, I think, 3 weekends. And you take another mini bar exam that lasts for 1 day instead of 2 days, 3 days. And you have to prove that you did 5 trials and 20 hearings, 20 settlements, etc. And you get to put it on your business card and put it on your website. And that is a good thing. It does require 5 years in practice. So those of you that are planning on specializing, I would recommend that. Stacey?
Definitely. Once you start practicing, keep a list of the trials you take on and the hearings you are at and the cases you settle, because you will need a record of that when you do apply. So I definitely recommend becoming a certified specialist.
So Stacey, will you speak to us about some of the good bullet points?
Sure. I was very fortunate to fall into family law. When I started law school, first day of school, I also started working at a law firm with a solo practitioner, Esther Werner, who's actually a 1980 graduate of our firm, or at Golden Gate, and started working with her because I needed a job, and never expected to like family law. Never took a family law or community property course in law school because I thought I would be doing something else. But then I passed the bar, and she offered me an associate position and I needed a job, so I took it. And family law really just grew on me. The first year I actually came back to Golden Gate, got my LLM in tax. And that's been really helpful in family law because, as Florence said, you get to deal with a lot of people's situations. And there's not only tax situations, but they may own businesses and may have very complex financial partnerships. And so I think having a math background or business background can be really helpful if you want to deal with asset cases or even practice here in the Bay Area, because there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of interesting situations people put themselves in for employment. And so I think that was really helpful to get the LLM in tax. My practice is pretty focused on working with people going through divorce, legal separation, custody issues, child support, spousal support. I would say that's about 80% of my work. I do some mediation with couples who want to stay out of court, trying to resolve their differences between themselves. I'm the mediator. I also draft and review prenuptial agreements, which are interesting themselves. And a lot of my work is very transactional, settlement, but we also spend probably 1 day a week in court, mostly on a law motion calendar, deciding issues regarding temporary custody, temporary support. I think it's pretty rare that you have to take a case to trial. It's very expensive. It's time consuming. At that point. So I really encourage settlement for my cases, and I think about 97 cases that actually do settle. So a typical day for me is every day is different. There is no typical day. I spend 1 day in mediation, where I'm either the mediator or I'm there with my client. Sometimes it's acting as a mediator, and I spend 1 day in court, and I spend a day drafting documents or points of authorities by So that's what I enjoy. Every case that walks in the door is the same, and they're getting a divorce, but every case is really, really different. You're dealing with different issues, different personalities, different set of circumstances. Maybe a short marriage, maybe a long marriage, maybe very financially simple, maybe very complex. You may have a situation where people are very reasonable and want to work together. You may have a situation where there's domestic violence and a lot of emotions and anger. So I enjoy that aspect that every case is very different. And so I think it's important for skills to have, qualities to have as for a family law practitioner. You definitely need to be empathetic. You need to be sympathetic to your clients. You need to be very patient with them. If people are coming to you at the worst time, one of the worst times in their life, they're not always on the best behavior. They're scared, they're angry, they're embarrassed, they So I think it can be helpful to have a counseling background or have interest in understanding emotions. I think it's also important to be able to be objective and reasonable as a practitioner. Your job isn't just to necessarily be the mouthpiece for your client if they're taking an unreasonable position or advocating on something that isn't necessarily the child's best interest or is something that isn't going to help solve the situation. So we do a lot of time we spend counseling with clients and explaining to them what the court is likely to do, what the court will perceive as what's in the child's best interest. So I think that's important. Skills I'm looking for if I'm hiring individuals. I want someone that's a self-starter, someone that's not afraid to say, I'll do that and run and do the research themselves and not feel like I am building. I would love that, I think it's important if you can get experience at the courthouse, being a clerk or one of the judges or working there, because you can see real life cases going on and you can see, attorneys in action and figure out what the judges like and what the judges don't like and what's effective. And I think having good writing skills is, not only important for any area of the law, especially family law. So that would be
Okay, great. Next we have distinguished attorney Deborah Wall. She is actually well known in our community as family law practitioners because her subspecialty are LGBT issues, same-sex issues which come up over and over again, especially in light of what's going on in Washington, D.C. She has been in practice for over 17 years, and as I said, she's also a professor at San Francisco School of Law, USF School of Law, as well as being just some of the go-to person. If I had a same-sex issue, I would call Deborah. Okay, so Deborah?
Thanks. Actually, we have currently walked parallel paths. I also was a public defender for 5 years before stumbling into family law. And my getting into family law was so non-linear, although it sounds like that's true for many of us. I went on maternity leave from the public defender's office and basically figured out I couldn't be the kind of public defender I was committed to being and the kind of mom I was committed to being at the same time. There just wasn't enough for me to go around. And I didn't have a plan B. So it was kind of a process of just figuring out, regrouping and figuring out how to make my life work. If you'd asked me in law school, I would have told you there are 3 kinds of law I will never do. One was asbestos defense, the other was criminal prosecution, and the third was family law. So it's kind of ironic that I'm here. But the reason I thought I'd never do family law was because of my commitment to children. And I felt like family law was just too hard, that I would have too hard a time boundarying my concern for the children from the professional work I was doing, which makes it even more interesting that now almost 100% of my law practice is centered around children. So it's true, my law firm does a lot of LGBT cases, and actually the LGBT thing gets old. We do a lot of LG and T cases. There aren't that many P cases in there, but we do take the T part really seriously. So we have a lot of lesbian and gay and transgender clients that we represent in a variety of capacities. I don't do divorces myself at all. That's not true. I occasionally do them, but primarily only if they're collaborative. I am collaboratively trained. I do collaborative divorces, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. I do not litigate divorces. My law partner does. My particular part of our law practice is I do mostly family formation work, so I do a lot of assisted reproduction work, surrogacy, egg donation, sperm donation, embryo donation, and I would say maybe 50-50 gay and straight. I don't primarily work with LGBT clients in my family formation work, although they're clearly a substantial part of my caseload. And they're frankly how I got here, was through helping lesbian and gay families in particular figure out how to form and protect themselves. And that was really what led organically to my moving into family law. As I was raising children myself and figuring out how to take care of my own family, it just kind of grew from that. In terms of litigation, I do litigate, and really the only area I litigate in is parentage law. So it's the precursor to custody battles. If you talk to most family law attorneys, they will tell you that the most brutal work that family law attorneys do in terms of litigation is custody litigation, where people are fighting about children just because it gets them where they live and the emotions run incredibly high. I will tell you, and I think most attorneys who have done any parentage work will tell you that custody work is the prize we get to do if we win a parentage battle. Parentage law is probably the only area of family law where there are very hard cases to settle because the issue is someone a parent or aren't they? And if they are, then they get to have a custody battle. And if they aren't, they never see those kids again typically. And so it is incredibly challenging work, but also I've said a number of times I can't think of anything more important to do with my bar card than to try to protect children from losing someone who they have been raised to believe is their parent. And it really is through that work that at this point, in terms of what I do with my days, I definitely talk to clients every day. I agree with what everyone else on the panel has said. I've done criminal law, immigration law, and family law in my career, which is about 25 years long by now. And there's some real commonality between those three areas of law. They're all very client-intensive areas of law. So one of the first things I'd say is there are lots of kinds of people who are lawyers and do lots of different kinds of work. And I think one of the first things you need to think about is whether you want to be the kind of lawyer who has contact with clients every day, or whether you prefer to be the kind of lawyer who spends a lot of time on research and writing. They're both really valid, but they will point you in different directions. Family law tends to be one of those very client-intensive areas of law. But the other thing is I'm doing a fair amount of legislative work at this point, because with both the LGBT family law work we do and the parentage work we do, frankly, we spend a huge amount of our time practicing on the cutting edge. That thing you learn in law school, that lawyers are never supposed to do things we don't know how to do. We had to throw that out the window a long time ago because a lot of what we're doing nobody knows how to do, and then someone has to figure it out. And so a lot of what we've done in my law practice has been, picking up the phone and talking to a few trusted friends, and my law partner and I talk to each other a lot, and figuring out what should be the answer to this question no one has answered yet, and then how do we make that happen. And now getting more toward a later part of my career, what I've come to realize is making law on a case-by-case basis is incredibly draining on the parties. It's very expensive. It is very emotionally draining when you have no idea what the result is going to be. It takes a toll on the lawyers. And so to the extent we can actually do some of this legislatively, it's a lot easier on everyone concerned. So I now really am dividing my time to some extent between legislative work that I don't get paid for and working to represent my clients. Any other questions? How I spend my day, I get up early and walk my dogs every day, and then I make sure my 17-year-old actually gets to school. So what advice do I have for young lawyers? I get asked this question all the time, especially since I teach as well. How do we get to do what you're doing? And on bad days, I say I have no idea. But I realize that's not a very satisfactory answer. So I really have tried to figure out what useful I can tell you. What I can tell you is how I got to be doing what I'm doing now, even though I told you it was in this very nonlinear way, was largely by finding a nonprofit organization that did the work I thought was most compelling. For me, it was the National Center for Lesbian Rights. But the Bay Area is amazing in terms of if it's art law, if it is children's rights work, if it is, really anything. We have an amazing number of really incredible nonprofits here. And they all need help, especially under the current budgetary situation. And so I did a huge amount of volunteer work for the National Center for Lesbian Rights over many years, while I was also building a practice, but had time, and I still do, frankly. I was on the phone with them this morning. And through that work, I actually got to work on the cases that have now become the cases we rely on to do the work I do now. And so that's the main thing I can advise you to do, is even if you have a full-time job doing something that you aren't as passionate about, think of some way you can volunteer for one of the nonprofits that's doing the work you most want to do. And that will get you the experience, you'll meet the people doing the work, and that really is my best advice on getting a foot in the door. And be patient. You don't necessarily, especially in this economy, you may not be able to do what you most want to do immediately. And everyone knows that it's rough out there. But I think if you can show your commitment to that work by volunteering in the right ways, that people will see that you're actually working towards something. And so that's my best advice.
All right, next we have Adam Newford. He is the most recent grad. He graduated from GGU in 2009. He founded his own firm, the law offices of Adam Newford in the city. He did work for 2 small firms after earning his degree, and he served as an intern with the Family Law Facilitator's Office in San Francisco, otherwise known as the Self-Help Center. And they do host externs from various law schools, including this one. And I was just going to make a comment on the wealth of clinical experiences you have here. It's amazing to me that there are 12 clinics, something like that. When I went to law school in 1974, we had one, and it was just basic vanilla legal aid. Mainly you did eviction defense, people getting thrown out for not paying rent. So now you have in your school, and in most law schools in D.C., 10, 12 different varieties. So that is really the perfect way to get your hands-on experience. I do want to allow Adam to speak, and he will tell you how he established his firm within 3 years of being a student here. And I think that is quite remarkable and quite wonderful. Adam?
I can ask you to, I'll speak up a little bit more. Thanks.
Thanks. Well, my path to family law was, I think, a little bit more direct, albeit unintentional. When I started law school, I wanted to do biotech patent law. I didn't want to do litigation. I thought I'd be in transactional work. I was afraid to go to court. I'm not a very good public speaker, or I didn't think I was. But I really fell in love with community property. And from there, I took the family law course. And then from there, I took the practical class in family law with Judge Rudder Duncan, who's now retired. And that was an amazing class, because basically it was a mock, they give you a mock case, and you take from beginning to end. You get to work with all the paperwork, and family law is very paperwork intensive. Put on a law in motion hearing, and then take your mock case to trial. So I thought it was a very, very good class for the experience. My 3rd year of law school, I externed for one of the judges in the family court, Patrick Mahoney, who retired this year. He was amazing, and I really think that was one of the most valuable experiences in kind of pushing me into family law. I think it's a very unique experience, and I urge all of you to apply to that program. You get to work with the judges, you get to sit in on law and motion hearings, and sometimes some of the trials and long cost hearings, and really get to see what the judges are looking for, you know, in cases and how they make their decisions. Sometimes you can be a part of that. So I thought that was a really, really great experience. And then after that, I went downstairs and worked at the self-help center, helping self-represented litigants fill out some of the paperwork, you know, getting more interaction with some of the clients. And then when I graduated, it was 2009, the economy had bottomed out. It was pretty rough finding a job. So for the first 9 months, you know, I had this family law experience, so I just started going after CAT clients. I told all my classmates what I was doing, what I was focusing in, and I got a lot of referrals off the bat. And that was great. I think that experience helped me in getting my first law firm job. I think I had my first trial the February after I took bar, and got a great judgment for my client, and then just, you know, kept going to court, doing hearings, gathering all that experience. And then I accepted a position at the law offices of Triano and Byrne, which was actually catty corner for us. And they did high asset, high conflict, divorce, custody proceedings, but they also did business litigation, commercial litigation, and some construction defect work. And I kind of thought, I was really interested in that. I kind of thought that's what I wanted to do instead. So I worked there for about a year, and then I accepted a position at an insurance defense firm to get more litigation skills. And decided that's not what I wanted to do. It was very fun. And then I left and then worked at one more family law firm, and then launched my firm again last year. And so I focus just on, you know, divorce cases, custody. I love custody, love support issues, and I think the majority of my work is assets and debts, chasing money, trying to go after, you know, the spouses are trying to hide assets and money, and I really enjoy that work. I didn't think I would, but I really enjoy it. Most of my days are spent advising clients. As Stacy said, sometimes you get these clients that, you know, they want something specific in their case, but it's not always in the best interest. Their best interest, the children's best interest. So I spend a lot of time advising and saying, well, you know, if you push this to trial, this is what could happen. You know, I really, really try to focus the clients on settlement, especially when there are kids involved. It's just not good for anybody dragging, you know, kids through the courts. But sometimes you can't afford trial. Let's see. I spend on average, about 2 to 3 days a week in court on law and motion hearings. And the law and motion calendars are the smaller hearings. They're supposed to be 20 minutes long, just to figure out, you know, custody, basic custody cases, support, or other requests. And lately, I've been doing a lot more trial work. I also like to do probate work, guardianship and conservatorships. When I was a first year, you know, it's pretty scary. Once you're graduated, you don't have a job, you don't know what to do. The San Francisco Bar Association has a wonderful program. It's called the Volunteer Legal Services Panel. And they have specific programs. They have a family law specific program. I think they have a landlord-tenant specific program. And they filter out these cases. They try to find the pretty straightforward cases, nothing that has too complicated issues, that some young attorneys can just kind of work with paperwork, take to a hearing. And then they have staff attorneys there to help and support you. But they also give you training, free training. So it's a really valuable research. I did the family law training and then took a couple of pro bono cases. You know, went to court, I drafted my motions, all the paperwork, filed them, and then went to the court hearing. And then they also have a conservatorship guardianship program also that I did. And I took a case from that program. And I loved it. I thought it was really good. I really encourage you once you graduate past bar, if you want to get more experience, take advantage of those resources. And also the court, I know the financial situation, they're always looking for volunteers. And there's some great experience to be found there. I don't know, I really didn't think litigation, or specifically family law, was what I wanted to do. But after doing kind of commercial business litigation where, you know, you're representing entities, it's very, very different. I mean, in family law, I didn't think I was going to be a perfect people person. I think as Wall was talking about whether you're a research writing attorney or really think you want to have more client contact, I definitely thought I enjoyed more the writing and research aspect of practicing. But now dealing with clients on a regular basis, there's just such a responsibility with that. And sometimes it's scary, but I like that. We can help affect our clients' everyday lives, and it's very cool. I really enjoy that aspect. But another good resource that I have, the bar associations. I think as a law student, a lot of them either waive the fees or they're reduced fees. But take advantage of the bar association in San Francisco and the surrounding counties, especially for family law. San Francisco is a very good bar association. They're very active. They offer a lot of educational programs. But I've also attended a lot of programs in Contra Costa County and San Mateo County. They do a lot of brown bag lunch kind of programs. And the family law judges will come and they'll put on a program and sit there and they'll tell you exactly what they want, what they're looking for in pleadings, what they like, what they don't like, and when you're in front of them in court, and they'll just tell you everything pretty much. And it's very cool. I know Contra Costa County, especially for family law, they have a very supportive kind of group where their brown bags are geared towards the younger attorneys and providing support for them and giving them a very comfortable atmosphere to come and ask questions, general questions. Like I had this problem once. What do you advise how I approach that in the future? So yeah, the bar associations I think are very helpful. If you decide to go solo, it's scary, so you don't really know what you're doing. There are a lot of resources out there. So yeah.
I'd like to ask a question. This was on a bullet point, and I think it's kind of self-evident what the answer is, but I'd like you guys to chime in on how important is networking. And for myself, I'd say there's nothing more important. You network. That's how you build your practice. And I had a young associate come to me one time to say, well, I'm not really good at that. And my response was, well, get good. And if you have an outgoing personality like I do, you pretty much can talk to anyone about anything at any time. So get yourself out there, and after a while, it won't seem like it's drudgery. It's actually kind of fun. You get to meet people and talk to people. And your best referral source, I've found, are attorneys that do not do family law. Because if they do business law and they have an issue come up for a client who's going through a divorce, they're going to call you if they know you do family law, because especially with larger firms, they don't have family law practices. So if you endear yourself to a partner in a large firm, that's going to be a great source of referrals, right? And it can be in anything. I'm active in my son's high school, church, ballet, cooking. Whatever it is, you'll meet people, and let's face it, more than 50% of people go through family law issues, whether for themselves through divorce or they know someone who's going through it. So if you get your name out there and come across as a professional, reasonable person, good attorney, they're going to refer you. Right? So from anybody on the panel, input on networking?
I agree. Networking is a must. Even I think the situation I found myself in just by networking, actually, I have a whole floor with a couple other attorneys, and they specifically sought me out because they wanted a family law attorney in that spot. But I got that through networking. I met her, this attorney, after I had graduated. I had interviewed for a position with her, and then went to a different firm. But I stayed in contact with her since I graduated, and that opportunity just popped its head up, and it was perfect. But I wouldn't have had that if I had networking and just stay in contact with contacts you meet down the road. But I think specifically about networking, a lot of people get very nervous, going to networking events and whatever. But I think the important thing is if you're not if you don't have an outgoing personality, if you're very timid and shy, you don't have to necessarily be engaging. But I'd say at least be engaged. You can control a lot of the conversation if you don't want to speak by just asking questions. Just ask a question and sit back and listen, so you don't have to do the talking. And then you can steer the conversation too with the types of questions you ask. So you can actually have a lot of control over the situation, even though you don't think you're necessarily outgoing. To go out and just start talking to people and introducing yourself. But I definitely think networking is a must. And yeah, I think a lot of business comes from referrals as far as family law goes. I mean, I'm doing some small advertising now, and still most of the business is coming from referrals, other attorneys, past clients.
So I would definitely agree networking is critical, but I would also really underscore what Florence said. Nobody hates mingling more than I do. But networking, there you go. But networking doesn't have to be what you formally think of as networking. I mean, I agree, being involved in your community, whatever your community is, and making sure that the people you're involved with, whether it's through your kids' school or through whatever, know you're an attorney on what kind of work you do. That's networking. So it doesn't have to be what people formally think of as networking. The other thing I was going to say is we do almost no paid advertising, but I write a lot. And there are lots of little periodicals out there, or now, electronic media, where you can get your name and your face and what you have to say about something out there very easily these days. It's not like it used to be when I started practicing. And so that's actually another good way to start to make a name for yourself is, think of something you're interested in and write an article about it. And get it out there on the internet, if not any other way. And that builds a lot of credibility when you actually have, everyone knows what a paid ad is a paid ad. And all it says is you paid someone to say you were good. So when you actually have some content you're putting out there that might mean something to someone, that's a great way to get attention.
Yeah, I would agree with what everyone said so far. I mean, when I came out of law school, I started doing some business networking and was involved in a group where it was a variety of industries, and you talk to people, and quickly realized that I was getting referrals from the attorneys, and I was able to give referrals to the attorneys. So we decided we were going to form our own lawyers networking group, and now we're a group of about 15 of us. We have one person per industry, and it's a great resource for me, not only to get referrals, but if I have a client that comes in and has a business issue or a tax issue or a criminal issue because there's domestic violence, I call up one of these people that's in the group and say, can you help me out, or what should I do in this situation? So it's a great resource for me. The other thing I would say is, and I agree with Deborah said, you don't necessarily have to be in a business environment or at a cocktail party networking. I mean, I'm very involved in some charitable organizations, and I've gotten some great referrals because I think it's not necessarily how many people you know, but people want to send their friends, their colleagues, their clients to someone they really trust and really know that's going to handle their friends or their colleagues' case very professionally. And so you can do a lot of networking and meet a lot of people, but I think it's more important to build really strong, trusted relationships with a few people, because I get probably 50 or 60% of my case from just a few individuals. I'm an attorney in a big firm, I'm a business attorney. So I think that's more important than just being everywhere and handing out your business card to everyone. I mean, that does turn out, you do get some business from that, but I think it's more important long term to really build those trusted relationships. And the other thing I would say is, really protect your reputation. I mean, I get a lot of referrals from mediators who either have clients that need to have people in mediation, and they need to have clients' documents reviewed, and so they give their mediation clients my name to come and have them come and review documents because they trust my work. They know I'll be responsive. They know I'm reasonable. And I've even gotten referrals from, a couple cases where I would say I've represented husband, the wife has given my name out to her friends and colleagues because they think, that attorney was better than my attorney. So that's a great, endorsement. So it's really important to be very careful about what kind of cases you take and to be responsive and reasonable and really protect your reputation.
Can I just underscore what Stacy just said? I couldn't agree more, and it's really, it takes a lot of time and effort to make a reputation, and it can take very little time to destroy it. So I think being responsible and thoughtful about the positions you take and the cases you take, really, when you're hungry it's tempting to just kind of take anything, and so I would just caution you to be thoughtful about that. San Francisco may look like it's a big city, but it's a village. Everyone knows what everyone else is doing, certainly within the family law community. And, lawyers are thought of rather poorly out there in the world, and we're thought of as hired guns, and you get a reputation pretty quickly if you're going to be one of those people who will do anything that anyone will pay you to do. People know that about you, and ultimately you're not going to get the quality referrals if that's how people think of you. So I know you have to earn a living and you have to find a balance there, but I think it is really important to think about your reputation from the beginning.
And you'll develop a sense as you practice of the red flags that come up when clients are talking to you. And so don't be afraid to ask questions or ask for documents, because not only are you going to get stuck in this case where there may be a really unreasonable position they're taking, or maybe a loser case, and if you don't get the result that the client is expecting or wanting from you, then you're going to have an unhappy client who may or may not pay you. And so really, I think you have to develop a sense and pay attention to what people are really saying when you interview them and talk to them, and don't be afraid to ask questions about what their goals are and what their expectations are.
So I'd like to open it up for questions now.
Yes. I had a quick question here, Ms. Wald. You were talking about being collaboratively trained. Is that sort of certificate, or, can you talk a little bit more about what that is?
It's not, there isn't an actual certification process, but the International Association of Collaborative Professionals, IACP, has standards, and you're supposed to have had a certain number of hours of training. California has its own CPCal, which is every state has its own group. San Francisco has its own group. And they all set standards to be a member. I'm actually not a member of the San Francisco. In fact, I don't think right now I'm a member of any of them. But I did go through the formal collaborative training, which really is required to be able to call yourself a collaborative attorney. I guess because there isn't, being a certified family law specialist, you will get in trouble with the bar if you describe yourself as that and you haven't actually become certified. It's not like that. Anyone, I suppose, could say that they're a collaborative attorney, but it is a term of art, and you do have to have a certain amount of training. But it's just about hours of going to a basic training and then their advanced training program.
Can
Do you all
you
know
describe, maybe describe
Yeah.
it and how much traction it's getting right now?
So, that's an interesting question. Honestly, my experience in the immediate Bay Area is that it is not getting as much traction as it is in some other parts of the state and some other parts of the country. When I initially was collaboratively trained, I was very excited that this was going to, be the new thing, and I think it's slower than that. But so what it means is basically the way I would describe it is, so when you're in mediation, that's a triangular model. You have your parties and then your mediator who's being neutral. With collaborative, you have each party has their own attorney who is advocating for them. So I think of it as a square instead of a triangle. But the collaborative attorneys and the clients actually enter into a written agreement that the case will be negotiated. It will not go to court. We take it to court to get judgment rendered once an agreement has been reached. And so it actually creates a true alternative dispute resolution structure around cases. And collaborative practice takes very seriously the teamwork approach of mental health professionals, financial professionals, and legal professionals all working together to help, if it's a family law situation, typically a divorce, that couple sort of navigate the process of dissolving their marriage in a way that has integrity. The guidepost is something, some of what Stacey was talking about. We always ask, we ask our clients to think about 10 years from now looking back. Are you going to feel good about the process you went through? Are you going to feel good about about the decisions that were made, typically collaborative, as well as a lawyer. The parties will have divorce coaches who are trained mental health professionals who are actually helping them separate out their emotional issues about the divorce from the legal decisions they have to make. It can be an extremely rich and healthy process. It sounds enormously expensive, which I think is one of the reasons it's having a hard time gaining traction. Honestly, in my experience, my associate likes to say that lawyers are the worst trained and most expensive therapists that people will ever hire. And it is really true that in family law, we all are looked to by our clients to do a lot of therapy. I mean, that really is the reality of it. And so I love working with a divorce coach. I actually work with coaches in a number of my parent cases where we're not being at all collaborative, because having a mental health professional actually deal with the emotional issues, they're actually way better trained and they cost less. So I think if you use that team approach well, it isn't necessarily more expensive, but I do think that is one of the reasons it hasn't gained so much traction. In my practice, we have primarily been using collaborative to address the needs of gay couples who are dissolving short-term marriages but have very long-term relationships. The courts don't exactly know how to deal with that. If people have been in a committed partnership for 25 years, but only married since 2008, which is very typical in California, a family court really only looks at 2008 to the present. And they would have to file a Markman action and be in civil court to address what happened for the 15 years before that. And so that's been one area where collaborative actually is a really wonderful opportunity to keep it all in the room, to honor the relationship for what it really has been and not parse out those two things. I have a transgender issue that's come up in a family law context right now that we agreed to do collaboratively, again, to really provide some security net around them outside of the eyes of the courthouse, to resolve the issues in a way that feels like it really respects the integrity of what's going on for these people. So I think it's a terrific tool for the right cases.
People always say that being a family lawyer can be emotionally burdensome on the lawyer. And do you think that that would be, especially in like divorce and custody battles, do you think that that's more of a stereotype where it's there but maybe not as much as people make it out to be, or just some personal experience for you guys?
I think that it is a very intense personal area of law, and it can be very exhausting for the attorney. I've been in practice for almost 40 years and I'm still alive, so I think that's a good sign. As professionals, of course, you have to kind of learn to set boundaries, and I have trouble with some of my younger associates because they will get overwhelmed sometimes, and that's because they've given their cell phone numbers out, for instance. You learn just not to do that. If it's a real life and death emergency, they can call 911, and you should tell your clients to do that, and make sure they know that you're not their therapist, you're their attorney, and it's costing them $450 an hour. So it's very helpful to have a divorce coach or a therapist when you have a very unique client situation, and to set boundaries to yourself. If it's an utmost emergency, of course I will respond to an email over the weekend or at night. However, I'm officially not available when my office closes at 5:30, and I let my office know that. So I think it is important to set boundaries for yourself and try to develop some kind of work-life balance. For me, it's ballet. I was a ballet dancer. I still do it. I coach. I teach. A couple of classes a week, and it's good. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I'll keep doing it till I'm 95 or beyond.
be empathetic, be very genuine, but also really let them know what your role is in the situation and suggest other people that they can rely on if they have some sort of emotional emergency, or if they just need someone to talk to. It's a lesson I learned very, very recently on how to sort of separate myself from the situation, otherwise you'll burn out really fast.
The other thing I think is really keeping in mind yourself and also reminding clients what the courts, some problems the courts can fix and there are others they can't. We as lawyers really can only help with the problems the courts can fix. Someone said to me recently, you can't fix crazy. And that comes up a lot in a family law context. I mean, you have cases where the person on the other side is being completely irrational and impossible, and your client wants you to make them stop. And, you know, you can't fix crazy. And the courts can't either. So that really helps, actually, is keeping a realistic understanding of what kinds of problems you can solve and what kinds of problems you can't solve.
I don't know, for me as a family law attorney, I really feel that that's a large part of my job is in these high emotional situations. So I need to remain objective and neutral and help these clients because their emotions are flying everywhere. They can't really see properly straight. Like they're so focused on the emotional aspects a lot of the time. And you really, as a family law attorney, I feel like my role is definitely to be their eyes and lead them through the legal aspects. Like everybody else was saying, maybe refer them out to a mental health professional. I feel a very large responsibility, to definitely make sure that I don't get emotionally invested, because that's my job.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
I get really emotionally
It's
invested.
hard, yeah.
So
Because you're
balance.
dealing with real people in a very crisis mode. We do have to wrap it up. I invite you to stay and, grab one of these people if you have questions, or myself. Thank you so much.
Thank you.